So my name's Tim, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tim.
And can I just check, I don't want to embarrass you, but is this your first AA meeting ever?
Yes.
It is, okay, that changes things quite a lot. So I want to present really to you and to anyone else who's interested what AA has done for me. That will give you a good picture. My drinking lasted from around 1986 to 1993. My last drink was in 1993. It was 4 years into that I first started to stop drinking. I had something of a nervous breakdown was the term used then in 1990. I think they use different terms now. It's very hard to keep up with the terminology out there. And I recognised, I wasn't stupid, I recognised that drink was playing a very large part in what was going on with me. It was clearly, if not causing my problems, making them substantially worse. The sense that I was losing my mind was keener than it had been before. And I was drinking huge amounts of alcohol. To keep the story very, very simple, if a person is drinking too much, you've got two options. Option number one, moderate the quantity, cut it down, stop at 2 units, stop at a drink or two, or cut it out altogether. I suppose there is a third option, send yourself to hell, just carry on drinking impossibly until you die. I was someone who banged on to anyone who would listen about how I didn't want to be alive and how I wanted to die, and I made something of a spectacle of myself with this. Except when push came to shove, and I was really very ill indeed, it turns out I didn't want to die at the bottom of things. What I didn't want to do was to continue living as I was living. So that third option of just drinking myself to death started to become very unappetizing, particularly once I joined AA. There are over 1,000 groups in London of AA. At the time, there were about, this is the early 90s, there were 550. And I went to a lot of different meetings, and I saw the outcomes of the people who stuck with AA for a long time, and they were very good. And I saw what happened to people who were in and out, and it doesn't take many weeks or months to see people having relapses, people getting very messy, people dying. It was very clear, A, I was in the right place, B, if I didn't sort myself out, I would die unpleasantly and not on my schedule. And also with no dignity whatsoever. That was what got me at the end. What I was doing, the way I was behaving was, apart from everything else, deeply undignified. And I therefore, if I didn't want to die, had two options: cut it down or cut it out. The question of cutting it out doesn't come into play until one's tried to cut it down. If you can cut it down, do it. Run out of the building, just go and drink moderately. The AA literature talks about an inability to drink moderately. Now, it's very difficult to prove to yourself that you cannot drink moderately when you never apparently wanted to. So whenever I had drink inside me, once I had a drink inside me, any notion of drinking moderately was out of the window. I just want another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. It's just for today. I'll sort out my problems on some other occasion, but today it's treat time. today is cheat day, and I cheated every day. And every drink I had seemed like a good idea at the time. So it's very difficult to prove that I was drinking against my will. What does prove it is, first of all, the sense of remorse the next day. When the alcohol was out of my system, it was very clear that I'd drunk too much. I wanted, in a general way, to be drinking about a quarter of what I was drinking, because I could see, as I say, I wasn't stupid, I could see the effects of alcohol on my ability to work, my ability to maintain relationships with human beings, my connection with reality. It's very disorientating to start drinking in one part of London and to come to in another part of London. It's very disorientating to lose several hours. It's very disorientating to see yourself behaving in ways you would not behave sober and wondering which one is the real me. So no wonder I was disorientated. But the point is that if I looked at my bad, some evenings were okay, but if I looked at my bad evenings and looked at what happened on those evenings, both in terms of quantity and the amount of money I spent and the trouble I got into and the difficulties it caused the next day, looking back, I had never planned to do that, even though each drink seemed right. I could never put my hand on my heart and say, yes, that evening went exactly to plan. No evening went exactly to plan. Even the ones which appeared to go exactly to plan were empty and hollow and dead. Even when I got it right, it was wrong. So I wasn't acting in accordance with my own will. I was caught up in the moment by a drive which was more powerful than me to have another drink, another drink, another drink. It talks, I think, very well in the AA literature about a so-called physical craving. Now, the difficulty with that is if you work in an office, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone starts looking around for sugar and they look for the biscuits. Between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, everyone always looks very embarrassed doing it. But if there's a stash somewhere, one by one, you watch them going to the stash. That's a little craving. You have the desire, you go and satisfy the craving, and then the craving is gone. The craving for alcohol that I had was triggered by having a drink. I could be nonchalant and casual about the first drink. As soon as I had one, game on. It started, this desperate, unstoppable urge to drink would come upon me once I'd had a drink. And the circuit was this: craving, consumption, craving, consumption. No satisfaction, which is why it never stops. So you have to go round and round and round, because you never quite get there till your body just stops you, or a circumstance stops you, like arrest. Arrest will stop you. And what I learned in AA, that the idea which was presented to me was the way I drink, which is when I start, I'm off to the races, is a pattern particular to alcoholics. Regular people are just not like that. They might occasionally overshoot, they might occasionally get drunk. But this unstoppable desire, even when it would absolutely be in my interests to stay sober or keep a lid on it one evening, even then I couldn't do it. On those occasions when I was with family, and if I got drunk, it would just cause problems, it would be awkward, it would be embarrassing, I wouldn't have fun, I was in the middle of nowhere, I had no transportation, there was no one interesting to do anything interesting with, it would just be miserable. I couldn't even keep a lid on it then. What they said to me, if you're like that, if when you have a drink, it sets something off, and again you drink too much, hard luck, you're going to be like that forever. Your only solution is not to have the first drink. Now, this then gives me a second question. Can I stop drinking on my own? Can I stay away from the first drink on my own? And there had been some casual attempts to stay away from the first drink. There had been at least 2, maybe 3 very serious attempts to stop drinking forever. The third one was before I got to AA. I realised very clearly where it was going, and there was a very definite decision. I just have to not drink ever again. There is no way I can drink safely, so I must stop altogether, and I was drunk within 2 weeks. And AA is the solution for people who, when they drink, invariably drink too much and cannot stay away from the first drink. And the program, I think, works chiefly by a process of substitution, where I substitute a different way of living other than just doing whatever my head tells me to do, whatever my emotions tell me to do. I'm not going to go into great, because there is something that's very new here, so I'm not going to go into very great detail about the ins and outs of the program. That can be done on different occasions in different settings. But to simply present instead what AA has done really for me, this frankly common sense way of living which AA has given me, AA didn't make it up, by the way. It got it as a sort of mixture of all sorts of other things. But it's a system which seems to work with alcoholics. And the first thing that it suggests doing is keeping things in the day, not trying to run my whole life at once, not trying to manage the future, not trying to manage the past, not trying to manage myself, not trying to fix myself. Keep the focus simply on get to bed tonight without a drink, go to a meeting, hang out with some other alcoholics, make yourself useful, keep yourself busy. If there's something on your mind, talk to someone, tell the truth. I mean, very basic things. And that alone gave me enough space to start looking at the 12-step program. So it's not just a club AA of people clinging to a rock, hoping that things are going to get better at some point. There is a system here. And in my case, the way I would look at this is the system is one of clearing out the past and clearing out my mind so that all the fuel behind the drinking is gone. If I'm genuinely comfortable with my life, if I'm genuinely accepting of my life, if I'm genuinely enthusiastic, which word also means having God within oneself. If I'm genuinely enthusiastic, the thought of a drink doesn't occur. And when it does, a force seems to rise up within me to stop me. A force which was not there when I got sober. It's impossible to get through half an hour in AA, if you're lucky, without God being mentioned. The big idea, I suppose, in AA is that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Sanity being simply the avoidance of the first drink. Everything else will flow automatically from that. If I stay sober, everything else sorts itself out in time. The brain seems to know how to fix itself if one stops interfering with it, which is a remarkable thing. If I keep my mind actively engaged in all sorts of good everyday activities and leave myself alone, my mind starts to heal itself. But back to the God business. If one believes in God, very good, there you go with that. If one believes in something spiritual, very good, go with that. But there's a way of construing it if one doesn't believe in God, if one doesn't think one has a spiritual life. What a reliance on a higher power really means is relying on the strength of something greater than myself and the guidance of something greater than myself. Guidance and strength. Guidance comes first. You need to know where you're going before you can put the engine in gear. Before you move off, you need to know what the destination is. Guidance first, strength second. And who hasn't received guidance? Who hasn't received encouragement? The existence of guidance and strength accessible by the individual. It's simply a fact of life that one is constantly guided by things outside oneself. One is constantly encouraged by things outside oneself. The job is simply to activate that as a way of life. And then maybe, most people do seem to come to believe in some sort of higher power of God, but if one doesn't, it doesn't matter. AA works just as well for a lot of people. The actual program, as I say, there's too much to go into detail, but the sorting out of the past. There are 3 things I needed to sort out about the past. I thought there was an awful lot. I thought there was a great deal of complexity that I needed to analyse and figure out with long words and long sentences. And if I figured everything out, I would be all right. And that wasn't the case. The first thing I needed to do was simply tell the truth about the past in a systematic and concise way. Where have you been? What have you done? What sorts of thoughts go through your mind? Find another person in AA who can keep their big fat mouth shut and tell them these few things. It takes an hour or 2. If one analyses things, one could be there for 6 weeks on a single point. But to simply get the secrets out, the things that happened, what you did, where you went, who you did what to, get it out. And because you're telling it to someone else who is just a regular person, who has done all sorts of wretched things themselves, there's no embarrassment. They'll tell you some of the things they've done. Secondly, there's a line in Alice Through the Looking Glass where the Red King says, the horror of that moment I shall never ever forget. And the Red Queen says to him, you will if you don't make a memorandum of it. And I had made a memorandum of so many things which had happened, which were no longer there. The people were no longer there. The circumstances were no longer there. Everyone else had got past it. But I'd held on to these things. And my job was to simply accept those things, write them off, and get on with my life. And train myself not to think about them. Because they were no longer there. I was upset by something that was literally no longer there. The third thing was to seek out all the people I had treated badly and apologise. The only difference in my book between an apology and an amend is an amend has a degree of formality and sincerity to it, which an apology doesn't have, but essentially it's the same thing. Pay back the money, repair the damage. And then to construct a life of usefulness as opposed to self-seeking. And that must be approved by any religion or spiritual movement, or even good old common sense values from 100 years ago. There's nothing new about that. There's nothing novel. It's very unfashionable, but it's not new or surprising. And this system has worked immensely well for me for over 31 years now, in my mid-50s, and I would not be here and I would not be sober without AA. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.